For this roundtable, all I want to do now is basically stop talking, okay, and kind of pass along and give the mic over to everybody. And for this opening introduction, take a couple minutes and just say who you are, what do you do, how you got into the field that you did, and why did you stay? You know, everybody can, or take it any way you want. But let me pass it over to Joe.
Sure, thanks, Mike. I'd like to just start by thanking you for putting this together. I know it was a lot of last-minute scrambles, and I think it's a good event. My name is Joe Lanaro. I'm Vice President of Engineering for the Chazen companies. I've been with the company for 23 years and spent my 30-plus years of consulting experience here in the Capital District. I'd like to just talk a little bit about how I got to where I am. I started working for my father back when I was a young teenager, working in the construction business. My father owned a general construction company, self-performing masonry. And when I wasn't in school, I was working in construction. And I started at Hudson Valley Community College, and I was in the civil technology program. And some of the coursework was related to structural engineering, civil engineering. And a lot of things that the teachers were talking about with masonry and bond beams were things that I actually had experience with working construction and immediately could relate to what the material was that I was learning in college. And I think that really helped me get a better understanding of what it is civil engineers do. Being a civil technology curriculum, it was more the nuts and bolts engineering applications. And I found that very interesting, and then we moved on to Union College, where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. So understanding the theory behind the nuts and bolts, everything kind of built on each other, and allowed me to start my career out, I think, on a good foot. And based on those early experiences that I had, I really encourage internships at Chazen. I see a very strong connection between the academic side of what you learn as it relates to how you apply it in the real world during either design or construction. And if you can share those experiences early on in an integrated way, you get more value from what you're trying to learn. We have a pretty robust program at Chazen, and I support any of the Hudson Valley or RPI students to visit our website regarding internships. That being said, I also have a bit of academia in me. I was not only an alumni of Union, but I taught as an adjunct between 1995 and 2005, which was when they had their last graduating class of civil engineers. And we actually have a number of civil engineering students from that graduating class that are employed at Chazen and have spent their early career with us, and hopefully many, many more years. One of my common themes, I like to tell everybody that PE stands for professional engineer, not perfect engineer. We are humans, so we have the experiences of learning from our mistakes. I also like to share an old Chinese proverb where a smart man learns from their mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So sharing these types of experiences and learning from others' experiences, I think, make you a better professional as you mature over your career. And I'd like to leave it at that, and I hope there's questions from the audience about what we do as professionals, and maybe that can share some more experiences that way. Pass it to you, Vic.
My name is Vic Macri. I am the owner of VMJR companies. Started in the business, a graduate from Hudson Valley Civil Technology program. Went to work for a testing lab, caught the eye of one of the owners of Sweet Associates at the time, which is a company I own now. They brought me on as a project engineer. I worked there, became a project manager, worked my way through, and then somehow bought the company about 27, 28 years ago. But, as careers go, I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. And, I'm going to relate a couple of stories to you about my own family and how the careers go. I have a daughter who wanted to be a speech therapist, went to UVM, got into the communication sciences program, got to her clinical studies. When it's her fourth year, came to me and says, I don't want to do this. I said, well, you're going to finish, and when you get done, put out your resumes to marketing firm, because it's communication sciences, nobody's going to know the difference. She's now works for an advertising firm in San Francisco, and that's where a career path went. So no matter what you're doing here today or what you think you're going to do doesn't change. I have another daughter, civil engineer graduate from Amherst, Stevens Technology Institute, mechanical engineer, currently has her own jewelry business. Decided after 10 years of working through bridges in Scotland, all over the world, restoration work in Italy, that that wasn't the career path she wanted to go on. So at age 27, she started her own business. So I'm not discouraging you, I'm just telling you that that's reality. We all don't know where we're going to be. And one thing I could say about the construction business, design, architecture, whatever, it's an ever-changing thing. You learn things every day of the week. Nothing's the same. Everything's similar. Joe and I go back to Albany Airport. We had a project. We did the Albany Airport terminal, and then Southwest Airlines decided they wanted to come to Albany. Joe got hired as a structural engineer. We got hired as a construction managers, and within 5 months, we put up a brand new terminal for Southwest. We did some things that nobody's expected us to do, or how we could do it. It was a totally collaborative process, but it got done. So I'm a big collaborative thing. I know Daria talked about collaboration. That's really where our industry should be. It's really not what the industry is, because everybody's always looking for the dollar. We're in as far as our business, we're in a risk business. We estimate, we decide what something costs, and then we have to build it. And we're at risk. So, there's some, if you've got a gambling nature, maybe you want to be a contractor. If you are practical, deliberate, maybe you want to be an engineer. If you have a flair for design, you may want to be an architect, but it doesn't matter. As an individual, a person, remembering back when I was your age, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure. So, just follow your career path. But one thing that you should do, what you should make sure you do, is get the experience when you can. Intern in summers, do what you can in the industry, and decide if that's what you want to do. And I'm going to turn that over to you.
Just want to add one thing, because you said something that resonated with me. My father always told me, make sure you like what you do, because you got to get up and do it every day for a long, long time. So it's very true.
I agree, Joe. I love what I do. I get excited to go to work every morning.
Yeah, if you love what you do, it's not work.
Yeah.
Always excited.
I was not always excited. No, I'm human. Let's see. I'm Daria Mallin, president of Envision Architects in Albany, and if anyone wants to talk more about Envision later, I'm here. My business partner, Kelly Klopfer's here, and Larry McQueen-Pooler's here, who's a designer in our firm. So it's great to see everyone out, and I think that the most useful thing that I could talk about, because I imagine there's a couple people in the room going through this right now, is kind of my path and how I wound up being a professional architect, because that wasn't the path that I thought I was on. So born and raised in Troy, New York, live in Albany now, so I'm a local girl through and through. Our business is in downtown Albany, and I didn't see myself here or as an architect. I'm the daughter of an architect and a planner, so I wanted to be a therapist for kids, and you can take that as you want to, but I decided that I would be really good at counseling kids who had difficult parents through the arts and performing arts. It's true, Larry, you knew this. Yeah. So I went to Cornell for human development in the School of Human Ecology, and 2 years through the program, I wasn't really thinking I'd be a good therapist. I couldn't read the case studies. It was too depressing for me. It didn't feel like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was too much. I said, if I can't read them, can't help them, right? So at the School of Human Ecology at Cornell, you can also go into a major called Design and Environmental Analysis. And I started dabbling in classes in DEA, as we called it. Not that DEA, like the other DEA, but I still had a hat. So dabbled and felt like we were really focused on universal design and helping people, design for everyone, design for access. And I thought that was really cool and still a way to help people, not as a therapist, but by designing the spaces that they live in, that they work in, that they heal in. And it felt a lot better. And my grade point average went way up. So I was like, this is the right decision, because the first 2 years were really, really, really bad. And that's okay, because I'm still here, right? So like, if you're going through that, it's okay. You might not be in the right major. Switched to DEA, double majored in facilities planning. So big scale, right? Campuses, hospitals, big scales of buildings, real estate, some design, money, operations, and double majored in ergonomics. Smaller scale. What's the person do in their chair or on their phone or while they're reading something? So I was getting this background in people and space. It was really cool. Took a bunch of architecture classes, structures classes, took a mechanical engineering class, believe it or not, Tom. I did. Funny, just really quick anecdote. I know it's all an anecdote, right? It's just a stream of consciousness. Civil engineering at the 300 level at Cornell is about how to talk to people. Like how to have a discussion. So that was interesting. I did pretty okay. But, so I was exposed to all these other programs and it was awesome. Got out of school, worked at Envision, which my father, with two partners from RPI, had started in 1983. So worked at the business that was my home that I didn't want to go back to, but here I was going back anyway, right? It's okay. Finished detailing a building, saw it through construction. So like CDs and then construction. And out on the job site, me at 22 every week. Foundations, steel guys, and I actually really liked it. And I was like, all right, I can do this thing. So I went to grad school at RPI, graduated in 2008, and now own Envision with Kelly and our other partner, Jen. It's a women-owned business. And circling back to where we started, we're helping people and advancing people every single day through the designs that we create. So I don't want to call my path a set of mistakes, because it wasn't. But it wasn't a straight path, it wasn't a short path, and it wasn't a cheap path. But I feel like all the experiences built on each other and wound up in a place that was really robust. All these things made a great foundation for where I am today. So if you feel like something's not quite right and you might like something else better, now's the time to try it, because you might be right. So that's enough.
Your passion is infectious.
What, Joe?
All right. Hi, my name is Sage Frieder. I'm a student at RPI doing civil engineering. I'm in my 4th year doing my undergraduate. I came to RPI also through a series of sort of non-linear decisions. I wanted to be an orthodontist at one point in my childhood. I thought that would be like a good moneymaker, or I could like do something scientific. Both my parents are doctors, so I was like, oh, that could be fun. And then somehow I switched to wanting to do architecture, and that really like drove me through the end of high school. So when I applied to a whole bunch of colleges, I applied to like good architecture schools. RPI was one of those, and then I started doing like research into what architecture actually was and meant, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna be cut out for it. I wanted to do the design, I wanted to be involved in art, but I also wanted to do mathematics because that's what I really love and what I'm good at. In addition to doing something that you like, I think you also have to do something that you're good at. So that's something I realized, early on. Play to your own strengths. But so I had a friend who was sort of mentoring me and talking to me about architecture, and she told me about civil engineering, which I don't think I had ever heard of before. Like, I honestly had not heard what civil engineering was until I had already applied to colleges. But she was like, oh yeah, it's the, the structural part of architecture. It's all of the math behind it. And so I was like, oh, that sounds like what I want to do. that sounds like something that will be, actually good for me. So I came to RPI because they had both, a good engineering program and a good architecture program, and I was sort of wishy-washy at the time as to what I was doing. Since my time at RPI, I don't know, I've learned a lot, really just packing the information in, but also learning that a lot of it is about interactions with people in the field, getting the experience, like you said, doing internships, meeting people, and just all of those connections. So, yeah, that's me.
You've already heard from me tonight, so I don't feel like I have to say very much, but we've talked about non-linear career paths, and thankfully my wife has been very supportive, and you can read all about it in her book. But the fact is, we've had a very non-linear path. We've been twice across the Pacific Ocean trying to decide which side to live on in Texas, and coming here was a chance to repeat a choice in life, which you rarely get. So this has been a really interesting choice to come to upstate New York. I'm very passionate about education. I agree with Joe. If you go to work every day and you enjoy what you do, then it's not really work. I love going to work too. I love being around young people. That's the wonderful thing about being in education. You're around young people. I did not enjoy my career as an engineer because I was around old fogies and it was just really awful. So I quickly graduated to being an academic and have enjoyed the experience of being really a sole practitioner, a teacher, a researcher, and a consultant in various scales. I think the purpose of tonight is to talk about the fact that probably some of us are experts and that we are human. I'd like to own up to the fact that one of the most embarrassing parts of my life was when I was, well, let's just get a show of hands. Who is under 27 years old here? All right. Okay, so who is exactly 27? So I've been 27 ever since I was 27, because to me that was the perfect age. So you're the perfect age, I think, 27. I just graduated Ph.D. from Oxford University in wind engineering. I'd gone back to Australia. I'd had a job at the university. I was down in Sydney visiting a colleague at Arups. Some of you may or may not have heard of Arup and Partners. And I was boasting about how good I was as a wind engineer and that they should use me as a consultant. So I was being particularly arrogant. I was an arrogant little shit, basically. Okay, and here I was, because I'd just finished this PhD and I was the best in the world, and I'd just come back to Australia. And the guy that I was talking to had already done a master's in wind engineering. He was already an expert. I didn't really appreciate that. So I was being a total idiot in front of a colleague. And I think that's really useful to all of us to realise that we must really have the humility that we've talked about tonight and be aware that we don't know everything and that there are people who we can learn from. So it's really important that experts are human and that real experts are learning all the time. Okay, never stop learning. And that's why I say about curiosity. If you're curious, you'll be a lifelong learner. If you're not curious, you will not be a lifelong learner. You will have a boring life, you'll have a routine career, and it'll nosedive pretty quick. So be curious.
Thank you. I'll just do a quick introduction to myself. It's got a similar thread to people on here. I'm the oldest I'm from upstate New York, Ilion, New York. I'm 34. I'm the son of a civil engineer turned construction manager and a social worker. Again, for the social workers, the crowd, talk about dealing with never-ending things every day. Barbarian is a saint. I had a case of the oldest son's disease. Every Saturday we were turning on torpedo heaters, keeping concrete, going to construction sites, doing different things. And I got in my head, I'm like, design and construction, anything but this. Right? My brother Gary works with my dad, both construction. Now, they're working construction, and I said I had wanted nothing to do with it. I went to RPI for engineering, undeclared, ended up civil, kind of like architecture, ended up structural, and now I work in the industry, usually alongside Dad on projects and our colleagues at Chazen. And I grew to love it. I did not when I graduated RPI. I thought it was boring, dry, bull, that a computer could do better anyway. If it's really all about stiffness matrices, why do you need me? What I came to find is it's really more of which I've said this over and over again, I won't belabor it, but it's more communication, problem solving, and humans only really make decisions when they have a story in their head. So even if it's cute, you got to come up with a story of how a structure is behaving, and if you can, it's fun. Sometimes we're very busy, and there's a lot of fun to be had, so you pull your hair out, but it's fun, and it's rewarding in a lot of different ways. But I see students following the same things that I did, so that's a motivation for doing this thing. The only topic in the roundtable, it's not going to be a structured 10-question thing, is to what Pops said earlier, everybody's goal is to become an expert, probably, right? You become an expert, you can charge your clients money to solve their problems. You're becoming a student to become an expert. I'm fuzzy. I've got the gumption of start an initiative called Expertise Project. I don't know really what expertise is myself. I call it a storyline. It makes sense to me, but I think it's different for everybody. So the only real question in the roundtable is just a push and pull of what is expertise? What do you think it means to be professional? With an emphasis on engaging the students in the crowd. I had comments between segments when everybody's getting drinks. All 5 comments were like, I want to hear from the students. What do they think about this whole thing? So I hope everybody, there's 2 open mics that are floating around here. Jump in at any time is the thing. I'm looking at the HECC crowd over here. It was like trouble over here. But jump in. There's open mics. Right? In the spirit of starting with students, I'm going to throw it to Sage. Sage, can you educate us, please? What is professional expertise? You're devoting years of your life studying to become a civil engineer, professional. What is it?
Right. So I think to me, and I haven't given this much thought because I asked him not to tell me what the question was beforehand. So this is sort of on the fly. But in my mind, being a professional, being an expert, as you say, is really about the responsibility that those people carry. They are the ones that have to have the answers. And even if they don't have the answers, like you said, none of us are ever going to know everything. But they're the people that everyone else is going to look to when there is a question that needs to be answered. So being an expert is being the person that will say, I will figure that out and I will get back to you with an answer that I am confident on, that I can put my professional seal of approval on with confidence. So yeah, it's the responsibility of going through that and doing that.
Where do you think they get it though? They go back to find an answer. Did they go to the expert tree, take 2 bites of the apple? I'm with you. I think I might be asking questions that I don't know the answers to, but what does a person do when they go back to the office? I can see everybody chomping at the bit because everybody here lives it every day. I'm just curious from not an outsider's perspective, because you're interning, you're working with professionals, doing everything you need to do.
What's the question? What's the idea of the question?
How do experts become
where do you
experts?
find the answer? Well, the internet, first of all. Google it. Second of all, other experts in the field. Someone a superior to you, someone that you know knows more than you, someone else that is an expert in a side parallel field. There's information everywhere. Yeah, I guess finding it is just about knowing the right people, having connections with those people and knowing what they are experts in. Um,
I'd like to just say, it's been my experience that you develop an understanding of thing over time. One of the things that's very important to us, and I said this earlier, PE stands for professional engineers, not perfect engineers. So what we try to do as practicing professionals is continuously improve on how we get things done. And as we work for our clients trying to solve their problems, we develop things that we have to convey a design solution. So being able to be clear, concise, and with as many lack of ambiguity as possible in how we present our information. It's a challenge over and over and over again because we have to be able to communicate this thing. So one of the things that we've done as part of our internal process is to find a way to improve how we deliver a project, but capture the experience from other professionals in the office. So we have a process that we call our quality assurance, quality control process, where as we develop our project at the 30, 60, 90, and before it goes out for construction, there is a review that's conducted. There's a peer review, which is a review by other individuals that are operating at the same level of experience, just kind of checking the fundamentals of the design. And then there's a QC review, which is a more seasoned person that can look at the project and from an elevated perspective and say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And share some of their experiences through that process. And by going through the review and then having that interaction with the design team, you're allowed to, or you're provided that opportunity to really share some of those experiences. And I think that's been very productive for us. And like I said, it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes. And Milt Chazen used to say it all the time, you're going to pay for your education one way or another, don't pay for it twice.
And that's key, just working internally. I'll speak for myself. I joined Chazen, I thought it was, I know all this different stuff. And I had a little bit of a closed-minded attitude. And the culture at Chazen encouraged to talk out loud about it and fall on your face, but fall on the face within the family, and we'll keep each other right. That the program is very good. How long does it take to get the title of expertise? Do you need gray hair and 30 years behind you to do it? You graduated when you're...
I'm still 27.
You're still 27, so you're not there yet. Yeah. How long does it take? You said time working at it was the key thing, first thing that came out. How long do you think it takes? Or does it...
I think everybody's going to develop their own level of expertise at different rates. Being somewhat of an academic, there was always someone that graduated at the top of the class and someone that graduated at the bottom of the class. But as long as they learned something, then you knew you were successful as far as trying to convey something. So I think everybody's going to mature at their own pace. It's finding their own comfort zone, how curious they are, doing things that they like. Sometimes you don't always get to do things you like. But that's business. And I think it's just an evolving process that happens over time.
Vic, what's expertise in the construction business?
Let me just
the badge?
say, apparently I'm an expert now. Okay?
You're up on stage. There's an expert behind you, of course.
But,
Sell hats.
I personally relied on a lot of other people and a lot of other sources before Google. There wasn't a Google. And that's how I learned. Everybody in our side of the business, as a contractor, has to have a big ego. If we don't have big egos, we don't survive. So we all got big egos, but you got to bring yourself down to a level to understand that there are other people that know a lot more than you do, and you need to go to them when you have a question. And at some point in time, somebody will be asking you for your opinion. I had that breakthrough moment. I think I was a project engineer doing a lot of scheduling and whatever, but I was really just running paper through a mill. And then one day, one of the project managers came to me and said, how do you think we can get this done? And it was like the first time anybody's ever asked me something like that, and it will happen. What do you think durations are? What do you think that? So these are things that we deal with on a daily basis. And, as you go through the business, you're going to rely on a lot of people. There's guys in the field, maybe not even a high school education, been out there 20, 25 years. Guys that have mud, what we call mud under boots. Those are the guys you rely on a lot. Those are the guys that And David will tell you, we have some great guys that can figure out how to do something, and he'll put it on paper, make sure the numbers work. And, you know, and that's, you know, that's really how things come together. It's relying on other people, not thinking you know more than anybody else. And you'll be surprised when you get into the workforce that, you know, you really don't know a hell of a lot. You got a lot of practical education, but the practical experience comes with time.
Daria, I'm going to take the question, but put a curve on it, kind of throw it in the dirt at you, okay? I know I've been seeing it. I think you get a response. I'm going to just, you can just ditch this question and answer whatever question you want to answer, but let me throw this in with a compliment. Usually see expertise, you know expertise when you see it. It's kind of an intangible thing, right? Like, for example, you have expertise in helping and controlling a room. I've seen you in a room full of 20 opinionated, ego-driven people. And it's like, well, you get a whiteboard out, you get everybody on the same page, and that there's expertise in that. I don't know if you find it in the book. When you look into the professional world, architecture, engineering, whatever, you see expertise, how do you know it when you see it? Like,
great question. I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I think that if you pay attention to people that you consider experts, they're not always the people with the answers or with the immediate answers, but they're the people who ask the questions that find the answers. Because when we're up against a design problem or talking to a client, you know, I innately believe the answers are all there. There's very rarely the answer that isn't there, but how do you ask the questions that get you to the answer? Asking the right questions in the right order at the right time. And I think a real expert does that. And then after they've asked the questions, they really listen. And they might be able to synthesize what they've listened to from a couple different sources and say it back in the way that is the answer. So I think there's a lot of steps. I don't think it's the person who's the walking encyclopedia on one subject. I think it's more about the process of how you approach answering questions or asking questions, and that other layer of intelligence that does sometimes take the restraint of sitting back and listening for a bit. You don't have to react right away and answer it. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. But if you're picking up on the nuance, I know that nuance was mentioned on Mr. Barron's list of 17 things that make someone an expert. If you're paying attention to the nuance and you're picking up on them, you're going to be able to steer the room or your client or this really tough situation in the direction that it needs to go. And that to me is expert.
going like this, saying, I know better than you, is not a good way to diffuse a situation and get everybody to think.
I've been doing this forever.
Right.
That's not expert to me.
Chris, you, applause. Chris, I'm just going to throw it to you because
I was going to go back to your previous question about how does one become an expert, and ask David Biggs, because he is a world expert in masonry. So why don't we ask David Biggs?
and we have floating mics. We can just hand you a microphone.
David.
What, how beautiful.
Well, I was always told the definition of an expert is a guy that carries a briefcase, wears a hat, and travels more than 50 miles away from where he works. And then he's an expert.
Mark Twain, an expert's just some guy from out of town.
Yeah. I kind of feel that way. I don't feel as an expert. I just feel I've had a lot of different experiences. I think that's key, is knowing that the experiences are always changing. And right now, in my part of my career, I'm looking for more experiences. I'm not looking to repeat things I've done in my career. I'm looking to do always new things, and that's really important. You mentioned the lifelong learning, and that's what I think I'm on a quest for right now. The more I learn, the more opportunities I get. The second thing is communication. I found that no matter where I work in the world, it comes down to communication, because you have to deal with different cultures, you have to deal with people with different languages, and you have to be able to read that your English, as it's being translated, is being interpreted correctly. So communications is a big thing. So I don't want to say anything more other than thanks, Chris, for the label, but I don't feel it. The one thing I would add for the students is that you probably don't realize it, how the world changed about 17 years ago. We had the event on 9/11 that has changed us all as designers and how we approach our work. And I know my whole life changed. My whole international work changed because of 9/11. And as you go forward, you have to think about all the work that you do and how it affects other people. Prior to 9/11, I think we were in a happy stage that we could do no wrong, but now we have to think about security as well in our work. And so if you take a position and particularly doing design, you have to think about security a lot more and how it affects your fellow people. So give that some thought. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mike, can I piggyback on something?
Yeah.
So, Dave, when you just said experience, right? I have to tell you, in the mad dash to put this event together with Mike, and thank you for the challenge, I was trying to, tweet about it or Instagram about it or send emails about it, and I had to train myself that it was the expertise project because I kept writing the experience project because I think that they're really, really connected and interrelated. So when you said that, I was like, okay, phew, it's not just me. So.
And also piggybacking two things. One is a question I'm not sure how you answer, but give it a shot. And the second thing is afterwards, after you give it a shot, you're a kind soul. But I would like you to hand the microphone to a victim, a student victim. Anybody you want to choose. You see anybody you want to scan and hand a mic to, please do. And see, you're doing it first. Okay, I'll talk the question after. There you go. What's your name? What do you do? And
my name is James.
Hi, James. My name's Mike. What are you studying?
I'm a freshman student, engineering student at Hudson Valley.
Why?
Because this is what everyone told me that I would be good at.
Did you, let's see here. When you're 8 years old, trading baseball cards, you're like, man, I want to be an engineer.
Well, it wasn't baseball cards, it was Legos.
I'm just going to pivot. Connects came to my mind.
Should have, because Legos is David Biggs's technology. It belongs in ancient times. Okay. Connects is Industrial Revolution technology. It allows you to span much bigger distances and open up space. So I'm a total Connects person, as you've seen from the Ferris wheel and in my teaching, those of you who are yet to experience that. So Connects is better than Lego, but I'll let you get it, unless you use Lego Technic. Okay.
I'd be lying if I... No, I don't know what you're talking about. it's just Legos.
So you're, let's see here. You're a freshman, you're about to dump a certain percentage of your life. If you take 2 years, 4 years, and add it up over life, it's like it's a real percentage of your life toward the thing. There are people down the road that can provide insight for what these paths are. Do you have any questions for anybody here to be like, do you have any questions for the panel? Doesn't have to be a yearbook answer either. It can be, are you insane? What should I, anything.
My worst fear is that after I complete my course of study, I wind up behind a cubicle in front of a computer, and I really don't want that to be my job as an engineer, So, well, that's what I have to say.
Me
Who wants
too.
it?
Let's talk about fears.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that's on my mind. I did an internship this last summer, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit if you don't mind. with Springline Design with Jeff Bach over there, and it was a lot of desk work, more than I expected, and it sort of has me rethinking, you know, what does structural design mean? Like, is that what it is? I mean, there is some field work, there's some going to the sites and, you know, checking stuff out. But a lot of it is, you know, sitting behind a computer, doing design, checking things, doing calculations. So I think my biggest problem with the do what you like is that you don't know if you're gonna like it until you do it and try it. So I guess my only suggestion or answer is to try a bunch of different jobs in the field. Civil engineering or broad engineering, whatever you're studying, is a huge field. There's so many opportunities. There's so many different, you know, categories and job functions that you can do. So don't be too scared of being behind a desk. You don't have to be.
And I'll share a thing because I work in a cubicle, right? And all my summers were always working next to Dennis Barron, laborer, just being on sites and whatnot. I was much more tanned and much more jacked those summers than I was my first summer working in a design office where I lost my eyesight, my fingerprints, shop drawing, right? It's a thing. And it's not for everybody. The nice thing about civil engineering is you're not designing necessarily a thing that's not real. You're always building something that's getting built, and you've got to get there at some point. The thing I've found to like about it is you can kind of bookend. I'll just bookend experience with like working with an architect like Envision, working with Dennis Barron or a contractor, Vic. So I'll use that as an example. I'll do both. One, it's fun taking an amorphous idea in the beginning with an architect and try to wrestle it into an actual concept. That part is fun. Still in an office setting. The other piece was working with either a solution out in the field. It's like, oh crap, the anchor bolts are wrong. We've got to figure this thing out. We've got to kind of act like Saul Goodman of structural engineers, like, oh, we got a problem, better call Saul, we got to fix this thing. That's fun because every day that's delayed holds back a crew of 8 or 80. It's a real thing. And like with Vic and Joe, our teams, we got into some, I'm thinking of a certain industrial project where we had to kind of pull a system that was never created before, kind of out of thin air to solve a very unique problem. It's like, if, you know, in the Ghostbusters, when there's the chandelier on or the silverware on a table, you have to like take the tablecloth and yank it out. That's a bad example. What I'm trying to say is they had a giant facility. They could never stop using their floor, but how do you replace the floor when it's covered with stuff?
Maybe I can help.
Yeah, do it.
So this was kind of a unique project. We had to kind of think of something outside the box. So we had a large industrial facility. It was a processing facility that operated 24/7. They could give us certain portions of the building to work in for short periods of time. So we had to come up with a way to take a floor system that was failing out of service and put a new floor system in. So we came up with a concept of integrating a construction practice that's common to the highway industry, and Reifenberg would probably be familiar with this, where we used precast concrete planks that we could have designed to withstand the loads and the thermal changes for the floor system, and place them in a way that they could be laid in and then doweled together. So we had key stops or dowel joints that we could place, and you could take a certain amount of floor out, put a new certain amount of floor in. So it was using highway technology but doing it inside of a building. So it was kind of a unique application. Yeah, it was exactly. It was acid resistant concrete, stainless steel reinforcement, a lot of very expensive materials, but it was also a very unique situation. And it turned out to be successful as far as its final performance.
Partially because just Vic's team. Because the design, as soon as the scheme was kind of figured out, that's one thing, but how do you then execute it?
Yeah, construction
you guys,
logistics.
Collaborative. We figured it out.
I mean, a collaborative process, and like Joe says, you got to think outside the box. And you know, just to go back to your concern about sitting behind a cubicle, I've been there. Okay? But you got to spend your time. You got to work at it. You learn as you grow, but you also need to bring things to the people you work with, showing that you have
pay your dues.
Those abilities. And you know, once you do that, you'll progress. But if you just come in and think, well, this is all I'm ever going to do, is paperwork, it's part of the business. Unfortunately, a lot of paper. These buildings, sometimes I think, get built more by paper than they do by construction materials. So it happens that way. But that's, that if you want that career path, understand that it's a slow start, but then you'll ramp up quickly. But thinking outside the box, we came up with collaboratively with a process we thought would work. We decided to take our construction yard and put these things in the ground and beat the hell out of them and see if it would work, and it did.
Yeah, we didn't know. Like, what number do you put to it?
We didn't know.
Yeah.
It was like a pilot test. So one of the things about just careers and how they develop, careers change paths over time due to a lot of different circumstances. People get married and they need to maybe have different hours to balance work and family life, and with that you might have to modify responsibilities at work. Some people might be more interested or have a stronger curiosity becoming a technical expert, where others might have more organizational skills or more interest in interacting with the clients or a large team and become more focused on project management, where others may just defer more towards the business side of the industry and really understand organizational operations and how to be a practice leader and make money to actually support all the things we do. So where you start in your career may not necessarily be where you end, and you may actually change several times throughout your career just because that's life. But from those experiences, you should learn something and take something away every chance you can.
Daria?
I wanted to get back to the fear of the cubicle. I'd say if you don't want to be the person in the cubicle, then don't be the person in the cubicle. And when you're interviewing for those first jobs where you're going to be doing CAD or picking up red marks or whatnot, when you're interviewing, ask them what you're going to be doing and tell them, be upfront about it, advocate for yourself that you're really interested in getting out on the field. You want to go see spaces. Say you're more than happy to hold the dumb end of the tape because you can see a lot of cool stuff holding the dumb end of the tape, get some experiences, see how people work in their space, see how things were built, and then come back and be at your cubicle for a bit, but seize those opportunities and, kind of have that humility that lets you say, I'm going to go do some really mundane things just to get out of my cubicle. And if you're the go-to for that, you're going to have more opportunities to do that. And it's really about showing your passion and your excitement and letting your employer know that, because there's a lot of times when there's an entry-level person and they're very happy doing red marks, and you got to differentiate and distinguish yourself and what your goals are if you want to get there. They're not going to read your mind. So advocate for yourself.
And I think Daria made a good point. Remain humble no matter what. Yeah. You really, out of everything, just remain humble. Don't get too egotistical. Work with the people you work with. If you love your company that you're working for, show it, and you'll do well.
Like Jeff. Jeff is a structural engineer and owns a design practice with your wife partner Kristen. You owned a construction company. You want to somebody grab a mic and send it your way and just talk about, here's somebody who had a construction, we're doing construction, and decided, I'm going to go more engineering.
Boy, how much time have we got? I'll make this.
Carrie, when did you kick us out?
I didn't start practicing I didn't get my first engineering job until I was 29. It's the best way to spend my 20s as a practicing engineer. Everything I do is colored by the time I spent in the trenches. Much of what I do as a practicing structural engineer is about the real world constructability, those types of things. I was nervous at my first job interview that they were going to look at me and it's like, why aren't you where your colleagues, you graduated the same, I'm 5-6 years sort of behind already. And thankfully, I was hired by someone who saw the value in that, and it turned out really well. If I could thread through a couple of just common themes, I think Chris's comment about empathy is really, really important. I think what makes us a successful company, either working with other fellow designers or especially contractors in the field, is to have the empathy to understand somebody else's perspective. It's a cliche about the whole teamwork thing, but I could point back to the best projects that I'm most proud of. I always had a good contractor and a good cooperative relationship on that. And I sort of always approach, I try to, I'm not always successful at it because sometimes you're just at loggerheads, it's adversarial with a contractor. It's why I don't work construction. I think if you want to make, if you're out to make the most money in this field, you got to be a contractor. It's high risk and high reward. But again, the best results always come from empathy. You show up, and sometimes they're going to screw up. If you have an attitude where you're going to help them find a solution, and you don't walk into the room understanding, well, my documents clearly said this, okay? It's amazing to me to even just see shop drawings come back. It's crystal clear on my contract documents, but the shop drawings are how things were interpreted. But to stay positive through that, have empathy, the experience will come, et cetera. That's, I think, the most important takeaway from this whole thing. Humanity, human, yes, expert/expertise, but the humanity and the empathy just makes life worth living, and it makes me excited to have this for a career, really.
And Jeff, you're a kind soul.
Thank you.
You don't wish ill upon anybody. Can you find a victim, a student of your choosing to hand the mic to?
Who's squirming? I think I think it was insightful to ask about fear, because I can remember the other thing I wanted to share really quickly. Oh my God, it happened so fast to sit as a student here and to be just frightened of what am I getting myself into? Will I enjoy this? Will I be good at this? To you get a little gray hair and all of a sudden people look to you as an expert. When does that happen? For me, it was, I got comfortable maybe in my mid-30s, but I still feel, you know, that I'm not worthy to do this, that people trust me to do this. It's sort of, it gives me, it keeps me grounded. What are you nervous about?
This, for one.
Just stand up, give your name. What do you do?
My name's Nick. I'm a senior civil engineering major at RPI, one of Professor Letchford's students. While I have my fair share of gray hairs myself, I don't feel like much of an expert. I'm not entirely sure right now even where I really want to go post-graduation. And I only have about a couple semesters left before that happens. I want to get out into the field as soon as I can after May, but how much leeway really is there once you get started in the profession, as far as I'm not sure I really like what I'm doing right now, let me try something slightly different. Is there a whole lot of risk with that?
Who wants it?
Hey, Mike, can I chime in?
Oh, Dad wants it.
I think that's a great question. I'd just like to share an experience I had, right? So I graduated from engineering school with a bachelor degree in civil engineering. And I thought I wanted to work as an engineer, so I went to work for an engineering company. I worked there a year. I hated it, okay? It was bored. It isn't where I wanted to be. I quit, all right? I thought that maybe my future was with a contractor, and it so happened that in my hometown of Utica, New York, one of the bigger contractors, the president of the company kind of lost his right-hand man, who went out on his own to form his own company. So he's desperate for a guy to take his place. I interviewed for the job. There were a lot more experienced guys than myself interviewing, but for some reason he picked me, all right? Well, the owner of the company was desperate to retire, you know? And all of a sudden, I'm his number 2 guy, but I don't know anything about construction, right? So the first day on the job, of course, you had to show up at 6:30 in the morning, which was nothing I was used to, right? And the boss says, hey, the crew's out there getting ready to go to work. Why don't you go out in the garage and help them start up the compressor, right? All right. Not sure that's what I signed up for, but I go out in the garage, and it's hard for me to admit, but I didn't know there's a lot of pieces of equipment out there, and I didn't know which piece of equipment was the compressor, right? But anyway, I jump in with the crew. Somebody tells me to hook up the air hose. I forget to put the little safety clip on it. They start up the compressor. The fitting flies by my head. You know, my career in commercial construction almost ended 15 minutes after it started, right? But anyway, this gentleman that I went to work for became a mentor for me, you know, for his own selfish reasons, you know. I worked right alongside him, and he just downloaded everything, you know, how to run a construction business, you know, how to fill out the forms for the bonding company, you know, how to start a compressor, right? And you know, how many bricks a day a mason should give you, you know, just everything there was. And as I look back, I think in the first 6 months that I worked for Tony, all right, I learned 80% of what I carried with me the rest of the career, you know. So I think your question is like, once you get started in something, is there an opportunity to make a change? And the answer is, it's America. Absolutely. Just have the courage when the time comes to just quit, or just make that change, you know. I think each of us, career-wise, find out what we want to do through kind of a process of elimination. And that was the case with me. I just kept trying things I didn't like until I landed on something that I did like. You just got to have the courage to do it. You know?
Thanks, Ryan. Yep. Hey, tell you what, and just responding to the next question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I missed the whole point of my grabbing the microphone. So one of the themes of tonight is how do you transfer expertise, all right? And what I learned was whatever expertise I picked up was through a mentor, you know. I'm just curious as I look at the panel members, if each of them would agree or disagree that there was one person in their career that served as a mentor and was the single most responsible thing for them obtaining their expertise. Just kind of a yes or no as we go down through.
Chris, you want to start and we'll work our way this way?
Sadly, no.
Okay, that's legitimate. Right. Daria?
Sage.
So far, I've had a couple. I would say Professor Letchford is a sort of emotional mentor through this whole process of going through RPI. But I learned more at Springline this summer than I have in my 3 years at school. So Jeff and the other engineers at Springline definitely taught me an enormous amount this summer. So.
Absolutely.
But the foundation was superb.
Absolutely. I have a cadre of mentors. My biggest mentor professionally has been my father, though, so I've been really lucky because I've had 39 years of it. So
your answer is yes, mentor would have played an important role. Vic?
I had a series of them. I think the first great mentor I had was a professional engineer who was a project manager for our company and taught me a lot of discipline and how to keep organized, which is the most important thing when you're trying to put together a project, and also how to handle the money, which is for our business is the most important thing. As I moved on, we bought a company at or under construction, and the old mud on the boots guy was our general superintendent, and he taught me a lot about what I never knew in the field. So Prior to those guys, when I was in the testing lab business, somebody taught me how to design concrete mixes. You know, put it all together. That's that's where you get it from. But you'll run into a series of good people. I, fortunately or unfortunately, have worked for the same firm, different iterations for almost 47 years now. So I didn't jump around in jobs because I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy at times, there's no doubt about it. But I pushed myself to get to the position where I was happy.
Hey, Joe, how about you? Mentor?
Yeah, I've had many different mentors over my career, starting with my father in construction, and mentors when I was a adjunct at Union, and mentors with the different firms I've worked for throughout my career. And now I learn from my colleagues. It's and I think something we said earlier. It's a lifelong learning experience, and learning from every opportunity that you can, and for every individual that you can interact with is critical to becoming as experienced as you can as a professional.
I think learning from your colleagues is quite different from a mentor, though. And I'd just like to point out there was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education this week that talked about the most important thing that university or college students can take away from their college, the most valuable thing, and it's a relationship with a professor. The most important thing that students can take away from their experience is a mentor-type relationship with a faculty member. So it behoves us as faculty members in the audience, and there are some of us adjuncts and the like, about developing those relationships because they are really important. And I spoke honestly, I did not have a professional mentor in my career, and I think that was a detriment. So I agree with you that it's really important to have them, but my PhD supervisor at Oxford didn't care about the rest of the world because he was at the centre of it.
Exactly.
All right?
Right,
So
exactly.
he had no advice for me to go out into the rest of the world and be a successful academic. I learnt that, I'd have to say, really on my own. And so I'm very careful about how I mentor my graduate students and hopefully the undergraduates that I come across, because it is very important that students take away a relationship. Now, Mr. Crimmins is in the room, down the back, our ASCE representative. He hadn't even started university when he introduced himself to me as a student, okay? And that's the sort of attitude that's going to take him a very long way in his engineering career. So I think it's really important to develop that relationship with people who can play roles as mentors.
And just teeing that up on a silver platter, the press role, you stand on the shoulder of giants with everybody, right? Everybody has an influence. Like, I'm flanked by two of them right now, like Joe and Chazen. Your job isn't easy. You have to deal with a lot of different things, and you brought up more of a broader civil engineering perspective than I had coming in, which was kind of a structural focus. So whether you believe it or not, you're in my head professionally. Clearly you are, Dennis Barron, like Lanson. When I'm on the phone talking to a client or something, can you ever tell when I'm talking to Dad? It's just a different thought process. I hear you in my head, rightfully or wrongly.
I apologize for
Yeah, it's
that,
not good. But your segue for the professor, and I'll throw this out, was I had, there was one person I was ready to call it quits with civil engineering. Like, civil engineering, boring, lame, sucks. There's an advisor, a professor, who's also worked at the firm I worked at, sharp, brilliant, disciplined guy, super casual about analogies and things. He's very human. And Eric, yeah. And it's like, Ph.D., Fulbright scholar, no joke. But when you're talking to him, it's like, well, what's the analogy? Very human. It made me look at it a different way, which was good. What I might encourage is to do two things. One, Dad, you're a kind soul. You're a good human being. Could you pass that mic to Tim over here?
I'm gonna, because he's way too comfortable sitting back there.
And then what
I got to get one word edgewise before I give it to Tim, though. And just some advice to the students here. When you're job interviewing and the company says to you, what have you got to offer our company? Your attitude should be, what have you got to offer me? okay?
While being humble, whoa, whoa.
Right.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, like, and it goes back to what Daria said, you know, if you don't want to be the person in the cubicle, don't be the person in the cubicle, okay? Be thinking about that job that they're offering and how it's going to jumpstart your career. You know, what are you going to get out of it? Are you going to be a robot? Are you going to be a CAD monkey or whatever they call those things there? You know? Or are you going to be put in a position where you're going to get some responsibility early on and you're going to have an opportunity to learn? Because ultimately, experience or this expertise is valuable. It's what you can, I hate to use the word cash in on because it's not all about money. But it's going to want to dictate how much control you got of your career as you go along.
And so what I want to do is I looked at the clock. Again, I'm a son of a social worker. I can talk all night, right? But everybody's time is valuable, families. So what I want to do is I want to pull Tim in to share some words because, again, sponsored this event, and then let everybody do some final thoughts, and then we can scarf down some more food and go on with wherever we are. Tim.
Just a little bit about myself. I'm actually, as we talk a little bit, there's Hudson Valley guys here. I'm a civil tech graduate out of Hudson Valley. Long time ago, 30 years at the company I'm at right now with Reifenberg Construction. Went on for a civil engineering degree out of RIT out in Rochester. But a common thread a little bit with Mike's got going. My father's a civil engineer. Ran a water treatment plant here in Troy for 35 years. My sister's a civil engineer out of RPI. Works for Verizon Wireless, and my brother is actually, or my brother passed away, but a civil engineer, and actually was inspired by Chris Letchford as well when he taught at RPI for a short stint, and as well a Ph.D. Out of University of Maryland, and actually was a professor at George Mason University in Virginia. So a lot of civil engineering background. Presently, or I guess the future coming up through, I was kind of telling Dennis a little bit earlier, I mean, I'm kind of the guy that no cubicle for me. We built a house every 3 years growing up, and kind of the rest is history. 30 years later, as Mike references, I'm in Reifenberg, we do a lot of work. We work all over the state. We have an office in North Carolina as well. Variations from landfills, airports, roads, bridges, site work. Presently working with Dennis right now on the border entry station in Alexandria Bay, $200 million project up there, which we have about 50 million of it. So it's been a good career. It's a great opportunity for you guys, gals, to come up through for the education component is, put your time in. As Professor Letchford said, ask questions. I mean, your little thing there, ask, be a sponge. Learn as much as you can today. Because it all kind of comes together at some point. I'm not sure if it's when your hair falls out or it turns gray, but it does come together. And I wish everybody luck. I thank you guys, Mike, for putting this together. The opportunity, it's really been a good evening. So if anybody has any questions for me or otherwise, thank you.
Thank you. Would everyone just do any final thoughts? Chris, go down the line. If the answer is no, then it's just good and concise.
No, it's time to stand up and stretch. If you're in my class, you know what I mean.
Good. See. Closing words, Sage, anybody?
I always have too many words. I just thank you, Mike, for this opportunity. I think it's a really cool experiment, and I'm really looking forward to see what it becomes. And I hope that you'll want some help.
You guys, thank you, because I just was sending a lot of emails around and whatnot. You guys paid for the food, okay? So thank you guys for sponsoring the event.
Well, just thank you. Appreciate it. And hopefully you've gleaned something out of this evening. I'd also like to mention that one of my other mentors is sitting there. David and I basically grew up in the business together, and we kind of mentored each other, but we solve problems and figure out things, and if I needed something, I'd either call him or his partner, Tom. and we work things through. So there's also outside mentoring that's available with guys like him.
Joe?
Just say my thank you and good night, everybody.
Yeah. This was fun. We should do more.
Thanks.
Thank you.